Good morning, everyone. We're seeing folks sign on. Good morning, good morning. We're so glad you're here. Good morning. Well, on behalf of the WVU Center for Community Engagement, we are so glad you are joining us for this Academic Community Engagement, or ACE, event. The ACE Development Series aims to increase the breadth and quality of academic community engagement at WVU. Our intentions are that through presentation and discussion, attendees of the ACE series will learn how to get started or enhance what they are already doing and connect to a network of peers and resources. Today's presentation is called Service Learning in STEM, and my name is Melissa Calabrese, and I'm the Academic Community Engagement Coordinator with the Center for Community Engagement. To make our time together more intimate, you're invited to say hello, friends, in the chat right now, and share what department or organization you're representing today. So please take the time to say hello in the chat. And speaking of time, we're here together for about the next 50 minutes or so to share some best practices and ask questions about how we might be able to nurture inclusive and holistic ways of thinking, learning, and collaborating. I encourage you to engage in whatever way feels right to you, including turning on your camera and asking questions, using the chat, and or making use of the Zoom emojis. I'm quite well known for my heart emojis. This conversation will be recorded and shared with registered participants and will be added to our ACE library on our website. We have an extraordinary group of community engaged scholars today. Kevin Orner is our moderator, and I'll share a little bit about his professional experiences. Kevin Orner is an assistant professor in the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering here at WVU. After earning a BS in Civil and Environmental Engineering from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, Kevin served for 2 years as a water and sanitation engineer in the Peace Corps in Panama. He later completed his MS in Civil and Environmental Engineering at the University of South Florida. Kevin, as an EIT with engineering consulting experience, was also awarded a Fulbright research grant to study nutrient and energy recovery in Costa Rica. He received his PhD in environmental engineering from the University of South Florida, focusing on nutrient and energy recovery from wastewater treatment plants, and served as a postdoctoral researcher at the University of California, Berkeley. He currently teaches sustainable development engineering courses at WVU, where he is involved in service learning initiatives and serves on various committees, including the Faculty Advisory Committee with the WVU Center for Community Engagement and the Engaged Scholars Institute. Kevin, we're so glad you're moderating this conversation today. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity, Melissa. It's my pleasure to introduce our 3 panelists here today. So I'll start with my colleague, Miriam Leary. Miriam is an assistant professor and the assistant chair in the Division of Exercise Physiology here at West Virginia University. Much of her focus is on student success, including the first-year experience, advising at-risk students, and academic support for all undergraduates. One of her leading areas of interest is in community-engaged experiential learning, through which she has created programming for undergraduate and graduate students to promote health through physical activity. She has established a productive research agenda in discipline-specific education research of exercise physiology students with a particular focus on experiential and service learning opportunities in community-based exercise training. She has received internal funding to develop and implement community-engaged projects, providing exercise training to community-dwelling adults. Miriam serves as a faculty representative for the Faculty Advisory Committee at the WVU Center for Community Engagement, and she also teaches at the Teaching and Learning Commons Faculty Associate for Student Success. She received the Excellence in Community Engagement Award for Service Learning Instruction in 2020, and Miriam is also one of the WVU's distinguished participants in WVU's Engaged Scholars Institute. So Miriam, thank you very much for joining us here today. It's also my pleasure to introduce Celine Fitzmaurice. Celine is an assistant teaching professor and faculty support facilitator in university studies at Portland State University. Her scholarly agenda focuses on the pedagogy of community engaged teaching and learning. She teaches senior capstone courses on a variety of themes, including climate change and sustainable food systems. Celine has extensive experience facilitating workshops on community-based learning pedagogy and is the co-author of the All Together Now Participatory Techniques for Community Engaged Teaching and Learning teaching tool. She served as a Fulbright specialist at Okayama University in Japan in 2019. Celine is also a facilitator of Campus Compact's Communities of Practice. She recently co-facilitated critical, inclusive, and participatory approaches to scaffolding your community engaged learning course with Zipporah Newton Calvert. The course focused on guiding structures and metaphors that support and scaffold inclusive participatory learning in critical community engaged learning spaces, both in person and online. As a longtime practitioner of community engaged learning, she is interested in the way that our educational spaces can encourage practice, imagination, and sharing that allows us to grow our skills, beliefs, and relationships in ways that support all the community spaces in which we are a part. So Celine, thank you also for joining us here today. Last but not least, it's my pleasure to introduce Bill Oakes. Bill Oakes is Purdue University's Assistant Dean for Experiential Education and Director of EPICS, a service learning design program in which teams of students partner with local and global community organizations to address human, community, and environmental needs. Students in the program learn human-centered design, and community partners receive complete projects. In EPICS, which was founded at Purdue in 1995, students earn academic credit for multi-year projects that address engineering and technology-based needs of community organizations. And Bill was also recently elected president of Engineers Without Borders USA, which seeks to build a better world through engineering projects that empower communities to meet their basic human needs. So Bill, also thank you for joining us here today. So I'm going to get started with a question that I'd like each of you three to respond to. And that question is, can you share an instance where service learning in STEM had a direct impact on student career development, and how did it shape students or multiple students' trajectory in the field? So Miriam, would you mind starting us off?
Sure. I was reflecting on this question ahead of time, and one of the things that I prioritize is getting my students out into the community and working with community members outside of Morgantown. So really trying to get more into rural Appalachia and working with populations that they're less familiar with. And I've had some really positive feedback, not only in how it has changed their outlook on the service learning part that they're doing, but really moving forward their interests. So my students want to go into healthcare careers, and oftentimes they're not thinking about the rural focus or specifically working with older adults. And so I've seen a lot of positive changes to what kind of populations they want to work with after engaging with the community here in West Virginia.
Great, thank you. Celine, would you like to chime in next?
Of course, thank you. So good morning, everyone. I teach two courses currently. One is focused on sustainable food systems, and in that course, my students are trained as field trip leaders for farm-based field trips focused on environmental science concepts with elementary age students. And in that course, that course tends to attract a lot of students who have some interest in teaching, but haven't had an opportunity to literally get their hands dirty, right? To give that a try. And what I've seen with that course is that either students who were never interested in teaching previously really become interested in that and pursue teaching as a long-term career. And sometimes there's a student who comes in thinking that education is the path ahead for them and decides, based on these many hours that we spend in the field working with these elementary age students, that perhaps that vocational path is not the right fit for them. And then I'll also add, I teach a course on climate change. And just yesterday, I heard from a former student who asked if he could be a guest speaker in my class. He went on to pursue a career in sustainability leadership and is now in a sustainability leadership position in a local municipality and eager to connect with other undergraduates. So there's no doubt in my mind, as Miriam said, that because students learning takes place not just in the classroom, but out in the community, that connections are made with our partners and other constituents that can lead to career connections for students long-term.
Great. And then how about you, Bill? Do you have any instances of how service learning in STEM had a direct impact on student career development?
Yeah, and when I was reflecting on this, it's hard to pick one, so I'm going to kind of give you the spectrum. So we've had students that have gotten into this that have made a career shift. When I think of one of our students who was one of our leaders with a group that worked with Habitat for Humanity, looked at really what she wanted to do and went in shifted from engineering over into mathematics education to prepare the next generation. There are students that get into this work that want to make this work more of a core of what they do for their career. At the Engineers Without Borders conference, I ran into a student I had 10 years ago that just joined EWB full time to be able to do development work. Then there are students that it impacts the type of company that they work with, that may be a little bit more traditional, but they're looking at, well, it's not their main career. They're looking at opportunities. For example, they partner with our EPICS program, become engaged. They get involved with like an EWB professional chapter, or they get involved locally. So they remain engaged over with within their community, but they may have a little bit more of a traditional career path. So I've seen that the range. I think this work impacts different students at different levels. I do think in the STEM fields, it's a little bit of a trap when we talk about the cases. Like if I talk about Laura who went into teaching, I think that can scare some of our other faculty colleagues. There's evidence that the students that do this kind of work actually succeed in traditional industry. It prepares them even for those things. So I think that we talk about the spectrum of things.
Great, thank you. My next question gets at more of how service learning can often integrate multiple disciplines. So I took a master's program that integrated environmental engineering with anthropology and public health. So Celine, maybe I'll start off with you first. So given this increased emphasis in interdisciplinary approaches, how do you see service learning bridging the gap between STEM disciplines and other fields? And maybe if there are any like specific fields that you often interact with more than others, especially as it relates to service learning.
Thank you again for that question. I just wanted to also let folks know, I put in the chat related to our last question, a list of the NACE competencies, National Association for Colleges and Employers, which really overlaps nicely with service learning pedagogy. So I was saying before we started this meeting, I was saying to the other presenters that I am trained as a sociocultural anthropologist. So I do not come out of STEM fields. And I'll use the example of my climate change course. That's a course that I teach that is, all of our service learning courses are called capstones and they're interdisciplinary. So in that course, I have students from a variety of majors looking at climate change through a number of themes. Week by week, we have a different theme. One week might be global climate agreements and current science. Another might be the impact of the climate crisis on the margins. Another might be youth voice. So what I find in these courses is that students really teach and learn from each other, drawing on their own disciplinary expertise and of course their lived experience and in some cases professional experience. And as one example, yesterday I was I do midterm interviews with students, and I had a student who was a marine biologist. And one of the comments that he shared with me as part of a midterm check-in was that he feels like the general public doesn't think as much about oceans as they do about land when we think about the impact of climate change on the world. And so one of the challenges that he and I discussed for him was, as a scientist, to think about how he might share that information in a way that's accessible to all of the other students in the course as a way of practicing how to communicate scientific concepts to the broader public in his career. So that's one example that comes to mind for me.
Great, thank you. Bill, I'll go to you next. So you come from an engineering background. Do you have your engineering students interact with other departments or other areas of study more often? than others, or do you see students your engineering students just kind of staying within engineering, especially as it relates to your ethics program?
So the interdisciplinary stuff in some ways is easier, in some ways harder. The easy part, I think when you're trying to tackle real issues, you need diverse backgrounds. So our ethics program, we have about 700 students a semester. About a third of those are from outside of engineering. When all the projects are involved technology in some way. So one of the things that we've learned is we use the term design and not engineering. And if we're working with diverse communities or working with things, often we need students from different backgrounds. What we've also learned, though, is one of the challenges has been the faculty, especially the engineering faculty, working with them on how all students can in different disciplines can apply. But when we've got things, for example, we're working with schools, we need people from education. When we're working with people from different cultures, having some people that can think about the people. We also use human-centered design a lot model. So we're really talking about how to engage people and trying to work so that everybody's on the team. So we don't segment to say, oh, we need to do something over here so the education students are going to participate and they're going to throw it over the walls. Is how do people work together? Having worked outside the university is the only place where we really segregate people by disciplines and majors. And what we try to emphasize is professional preparation. We're preparing students for after graduation, and this is one of the things that they will have to work together.
Great, thanks, Bill. Miriam, I'll lastly ask you, can you talk about your community engaged work and if there are other disciplines within the university that you find yourself collaborating with for these types of endeavors more than others?
Personally, in my own service learning pedagogy, I haven't drawn from other disciplines very much, but in thinking about the question, in healthcare, interprofessional education is really huge, and there's always a lens of community engagement there. How, as a practitioner, can I work with physician's assistants and pharmacists and social workers to give quality care in a teamwork setting? And so I was thinking a lot about how when we talk about this in a theoretical construct in our classrooms, I think our students can conceptually understand it, but it's not until they're in their internship or service learning position where they really get to understand from the patient care level what it means to have this interdisciplinary approach to healthcare. And not only in the clinical setting, working with a pharmacist and the nursing staff, but also looking at funding organizations and how different transportation barriers get in the way, and really how the community itself can shape healthcare in that setting. So it's not something I've done a lot of work with personally in a service learning group, but it's definitely concepts that we're trying to share with students early. Even in my first year seminar class with new freshmen, we're talking about how important it is to have this interprofessional, interdisciplinary approach to healthcare.
Great, thank you. The next question I'm going to get at here talks about how interdisciplinary or how community engaged work can be applied in a global setting. So considering the global nature of many challenges addressed in STEM fields, how can service learning initiatives prepare students to be effective contributors in an international context, fostering a global perspective in their education? So Bill, I'm going to start out with you, and you could talk about EWB USA here if you want, or even some work at Purdue. So kind of talk about how this community engaged work can be applied in a global setting, and kind of what are the strengths of it and what are some challenges to be aware of as well.
There are enormous opportunities in the global setting. What we've seen is you can get students excited about more exotic, different culture. One of the dangers and kind of where the field is at is really looking at how we do this work. is reciprocal, and even we use the term colonial mindset that we're going to go over and we're going to go fix something. So a lot of the discussion now is how do we do things with, and one of the opportunities that I think is really exciting is partnering with other universities and in other students. And one of the things that we're starting to do is to look at two-way partnerships. So we tend to think of, can we do partners over in a different country, Africa, Asia, Latin America? But we've got some teams where we're looking at projects here locally and internationally. And can we have teams working both ways? It is where we're at.
That's a great idea. Miriam, do you have anything to share about either your direct experience or what your students go on to do afterwards about how this community engaged work can be translated to an international setting?
So I'm a co-director of our internship experience, and prior to COVID, we were sending students down to Brazil. There was a therapeutic facility that was targeting children with special needs, and they had a therapy pool for these kids to spend time in, and we would send a couple of students doing more like a study abroad trip, but an internship experience where they provided this kind of therapy in the pool setting to these children. And one of the biggest things that we learned in our first experience down there was it needed to be less about working directly with the children and more about training the people that work there, so that once our students leave and we're not there for the next semester, they can continue to offer those therapy services to the children. And so that was one of the big takeaways from that project, was that so many of this service learning is not just going in and providing the care, but making sure that once we pull out, it can still be sustainable.
Great, thank you. Celine, lastly, I'll come to you. Do you want to talk about how community engaged work can be applied in an international setting and some lessons learned that you may have come upon along the way?
Sure, thanks for asking. I feel like this could be a separate session. So I am the product of international ed myself, and really believe strongly in the ways that global experiences can shape our mindset. I, as a service learning professional over the years, have really wrangled with this, I have to say. So I think many of you here know bringing students abroad as part of a service learning experience has the potential for great outcomes, and it also has the potential to perpetuate stereotypes and more of a charity-based approach, right, to serving others. So in our program at my institution, we don't have that many international, what we call service learning capstones, because the bar is held so high in our course review committee. And what we're looking for is partnerships that really focus on reciprocity and solidarity, as opposed to just one-way service. Having said that, I've in my courses, domestic courses, one of the things I'll say is that so many of the issues we're talking about now are global in nature. And one pattern that I see repeated over and over again that students tend to grasp is that wherever you live, folks on the margins oftentimes suffer disproportionately the effects of climate change or food insecurity. And so those same patterns play out on a national or domestic level and also on a global level. And thank goodness for, I am always thrilled when an international student walks into my course on the first day, because they bring such wonderful and unique perspectives. Thanks.
That's great. Bill, I see you have your hand raised. Do you want to add something to this conversation?
Celine triggered something, and some of the conversations that we're having around, especially global development, is the bar within our community. We've, especially in engineering, I think 20, 25 years ago, the community engagement, community engaged learning community, service learning community. Celine, that's an example where service learning is helpful, because I can say service learning community kind of welcomed us and like, oh, we're so happy you're here. And now the discussion is, how are we doing this work? And I think that there's a danger for us to look at this work to try to get it, to raise the bar so high that if it's not perfect, we're not doing it and things don't get done. And so there's a balance and a tension. Clearly, you know, the colonial or the charity model, the saviorism is not the right approach. But it's almost impossible to get rid of those elements totally in the work. And in a lot of the work that we're doing, kind of the leading edge conversations we have are, you know, where's that balance? And I really feel like in engineering right now, there's a shift. There's an awareness of these issues, but in some ways it's shifted so far that I think it's paralyzing people from getting into the field. When you get people that are really experienced and we get talking about how we started, we laugh at the mistakes that we made in some of those. And I worry that it's how do we increase the standards, but we still allow entry points for people to come in and learn and make mistakes. And those are just tensions. Those are kind of polarities, but I just wanted to bring that in.
Yeah, when you were talking about entry points, Bill, my entry into this work was EWB when I was an undergraduate student, and I went on to do like a senior capstone project. And one of the benefits I had was just really strong mentors who, you know, were presidents of engineering consulting firms and were like, hey, I'm gonna spend 2 weeks as we go to Ecuador. So I think one of the other, I don't know if you want to call them guardrails or best practices is having really strong engineering mentors or other STEM mentors doing this type of work. But I realized that doing EWB, I wanted even more, you know, training and, you know, cultural competency, and that led me to join the Peace Corps. But I may have not done the Peace Corps unless I had done EWB as an undergraduate student. Celine, did you have any other thoughts on, you know, where should the bar be? How can it be high enough but still having entry points into this type of work?
I just really appreciate this discussion once again, because I just know that the power of international experiences. I was just about to write in the chat here that I think a very well-designed orientation for international programs can guard against these perpetuating these practices of students coming in, perhaps feeling like they have something to offer, but not thinking about the reciprocal nature of the relationship. So it's the devil's in the details, right? And I'll speak to that later. One of your other questions also address that for me. What we do early on in a course, a service learning experience, to build a container that allows for a transformative experience in which no harm is done to any communities that we serve.
Great. One of the other questions I'll ask each of you is, what advice would you give to faculty who are looking to incorporate service learning into their STEM courses for the first time? Miriam, would you be willing to respond first?
Sure. I feel like I haven't been doing this too long. So when I got into it, it still feels very fresh in my mind because it doesn't feel that long ago. I think starting very small is always a good approach with service learning projects. I come from a very large undergraduate program of over 800 students. And so my projects have to be small at first to be manageable. And then I would say that if you're incorporating this into your coursework, it definitely needs to tie into your learning outcomes. So what learning outcomes do you really want to focus on? Because I would encourage you, before you start sending them out into the field, how are you going to evaluate whether they have met and achieved these learning outcomes? And so evaluating this is really key for me. So I focused a lot on that for my first project. And I found that to be very helpful because then as my initiative grew a little bit, I could show my chair or other admin that I'm achieving these learning outcomes and all of these other outcomes that I wanted to show. Then I could take it to my chair and say, I need some more resources. I need some more time. I need some more funding for this. And it's only if I can document and prove that my students are achieving these learning outcomes can I really request this. And the the other piece of advice, I know this too, but the other one is that, especially here at WVU, our Center for Community Engagement is phenomenal. We have incredible support staff with brilliant ideas, and they have partners all over the region. And so I feel like my first one, I started in isolation. I really wish I had reached out to my CCE first. And so that is a big plug for them, and something I would recommend for anybody considering starting service learning.
And Miriam, could you also talk a little bit too about how much extra time it takes to integrate service learning into your course? Is it a little bit more? Is it a lot more? Can you just talk about if faculty are doing this for the first time, how much more of their time is it going to take to do it?
Honestly, for me, if I'm developing a new lecture course, the lecture course takes a lot of prep because I have a lot to learn there. So for my first time, I spent a lot of time digging into the literature on service learning to better understand it before I implemented it. So I took a lot of time before starting my class, like the semester, the summer, before really trying to understand what service learning meant and what it could look like in my discipline. So I don't know that it's different than any other course prep in terms of the time commitment, but once your students are out in the field, there's a lot more communication with my service learning students than somebody that I have in just a typical lecture class. So that kind of mentoring, that can take some time, but it's also very rewarding. So, you know, not to discourage you.
Celine, would you like to go next, talking about any best practices to give faculty wanting to incorporate service learning into their courses?
Thank you. Miriam, you really speak my mind, so I won't say much more. I had written to myself in bold print, start small and one partnership, not multiple partnerships, but one partnership. And speaking of that, I would say take time before, as you're developing the course and before it's launched, to really get to know that partner, to understand their gifts and their needs, to make sure that they're fully invested in the experience with you. Because their presence in the course is just powerful, both for learning about the content and also perhaps inspiring students towards careers or other future service related to the themes they're working on. So I'll keep it short there. Thanks.
Lastly, Bill, do you have anything to add as far as integrating service learning into courses or internship experiences?
I'll echo start small. I'll even give you an idea for even smaller. If you're thinking about doing this, something I've done in others is you can engage a class in the design of the service learning. So if you're looking at a class and you're like, okay, here's the project, we've actually taken students and saying, okay, what would this look like? What are some of the ideas? And you can get a lot of the learning. Do take it small. Be honest with your partners. You know, I love what Celine said is to get to know them, have a conversation, and just be honest about what's realistic that you can do. And continue that. And I think with the idea that you're going to continue with a partner, the Lakota tribe has a term, white van folks. The people show up in white vans, they do a little thing and then they leave. And a lot of times when we're like, oh, I need a partner for a project, thank you, and now I'm going to look for somebody else, we kind of do that. And once you find a partner and can get to know them, it's a lot easier to just keep them. The other thing I would say is use your resources. If you've got a center, find some other people that have done it, because there are going to be things that happen where you need some people to go, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? There are things that we're not used to doing as engineering or STEM faculty, like reflection. Having some folks that can give you some tools is really helpful.
Great. So I'm going to move on to questions that are a little bit more targeted, specific to each of you. So for Miriam, in your role as faculty associate for student success and through your research on experiential and service learning opportunities, how do you believe these initiatives contribute to broader student success, including academic achievement, but also after they graduate?
Thank you, Kevin. So my students come in wanting to go into healthcare after their undergraduate, but they want to go into medical school, dental school, physical therapy, physician's assistant. And so they're 4 years with us. I think they really feel like I have to check a bunch of boxes and maintain a high GPA, and then I can go do what I want to do. And so I see this a lot where it feels like my students are just in class checking boxes and they're not really engaged as much as I want them to be. And I think any educator could probably feel this right now. But my students, when they get to go out into the field, and even within the scope of practice that I allow them to do as an undergraduate student, they get to feel like they are making more of an impact. They're doing something. They see skills that translate to what they want to do professionally. And so that kind of engagement, I'm looking for that in all of my classes, but I see it the most in the ones where we do service learning together. I think the ability to develop that, the problem solving skills and professional development and the civic engagement, it so ties together that they're able to see themselves as a future healthcare professional. And so I think it elevates their effort in my class, but also their other classes, so they have overall better semesters and student success. So
Yeah, and can you talk a little bit about if you've seen employers looking for some of these skills that the students have achieved either through your classes or the other experiential learning opportunities?
yeah, so one of the biggest things with service learning is to tie in the reflections. And Kevin, I think one of the questions that we didn't get to answer, it was something about like, how has service learning influenced our approach to education? I now turn reflections into all of my classes. Even, and coming from STEM disciplines, it feels so soft to say, I'm gonna grade you on a reflection. They're more like participation points, but it is just, to me, it's a huge component of teaching right now to get students to think about, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? And how is this going to help you moving forward? So that part about how does this impact your professional development has been a big one for my students, because we're constantly trying to get them to think that next step ahead. Why is this relevant to you? And so I feel like I'm off on a tangent about how much I'm in love with reflections right now. But what was your question? Kevin, I'm so sorry. What was I answering?
Just like, do employers
Oh.
specifically seek out the skills that the students have achieved or developed in your classes?
Thank you, Kevin. I'm so sorry. So one of the things that I share with my students is some kind of report came out a few years ago that the things that they're looking for, all of you guys are graduating with the same degree, with this competitive GPA, but they are looking at your ability to work in a team and your ability to problem solve. Those are the two things that employers in a huge nationwide report came out with. And that is exactly what you're doing here in our service learning project. So we reflect on those components a lot. So I haven't directly heard from employers, but we tie in employer feedback into our reflections a lot.
Great, thank you. Celine, I'm going to go to you next. Can you talk about any specific participatory techniques or teaching tools you found to be effective, especially in promoting community engaged teaching and learning in your courses?
Thank you for that question. Something I'm very passionate about. I'll share later in the chat a link to this. It's actually a card deck of teaching strategies for community engaged learning to promote participatory practices, which will include some of the activities I reference here. I think what I want to do is focus in on the beginning stage of a community engaged learning course, because these courses are not typically lecture format, using a style of education where one person is delivering content or sharing knowledge with students, but rather co-learning and co-teaching atmosphere. That's how I frame it with students on day one. We're going to create a co-learning community here. It's so important to what I say, to go slow to go fast. The slow part is in those initial weeks of the term, I spend a lot of time helping students get to know each other through icebreakers. We do group agreements, learning agreements, where students have to finish the sentence, I learn best with others when, ... And we look for themes and form agreements there. Identity work is important. All of this takes time, and sometimes students roll their eyes at the beginning. I've never had a student at the end of the term tell me it wasn't worth it. And the reason is through building that trust and sense of community, students learn better with each other and with our community partners. Just one other thing I will say that I share a lot with my students is this concept of claiming your education. Like, what does it look like for each one of us in this room to claim our education such that we get the most out of this experience together? Finally, I have this theory that classrooms are a microcosm of larger society. So the same kind of behaviors and patterns that we see in larger society play out at a smaller scale in classroom settings. And so within our co-learner, co-teacher community, we really work at developing civic capacities that we can take outside of the classroom at the end. So one of those would be deep listening, which we don't do very well in our society. Another would be paying attention to diverse perspectives and honoring those rather than viewing the world through a black and white lens. I'll stop there and I'll just put the link to this card deck in the chat. Thank you. I know time is limited.
Those are all great. Bill, did you want us to add something to that? Otherwise, I got a question for you.
Oh, no.
Okay. So Bill, we've talked a little bit about integrating community engaged work into courses, but you're also the president-elect of EWB USA. So how do you see roles like Engineers Without Borders USA, which is, like a student organization? How do you see that in connection to courses? Do they fulfill the same role? Do they have different roles? How do you see the interplay between students taking courses and students being involved in student organizations?
So the funny thing is I got more involved with EWB when they came into our EPICS class. So we actually EPICS is just a framework. It's a support system to support long-term community engagement around design. We establish the partnerships, manage the courses, and then students come and can take the course as like a technical elective or some type of elective from any of the disciplines. One of the other pieces with EPICS is most of our technical electives in engineering are 3 credits. And in fact, most electives are 3 credits. Well, EPICS is limited to 1 or 2 credits a semester. So that means students to get the 3 credits have to take it at least 2 semesters. And because students are taking it for multiple semesters, that allows projects to continue. One of the connections that I think is important, so EWB at Purdue was a club, and we actually had students that were in an EPICS team and EWB, and they noticed some of the problems they had in the club. We didn't have an EPICS, we have other problems. But one of the issues was the students. You have a lot of students at the beginning of the semester, at the end of the semester when exams are going, the leaders are like, where'd everybody go? And so we've managed the set of courses that are really student run. As Celine said, it's the engaging the students in their learning and the development. They are managing the partnerships. The program also has connections with partners in case there's damage. So I think one of the things is looking at how we integrate these experiences, how we relook at what a course is, not just giving credit for experiences, but how do we bring some scaffolding in? Miriam talked about reflection and things. How do we ensure that learning is taking place, and how do we value the community partner? And the other piece I think it is how do we do this work the right way? How do we do it truly in reciprocal? How are we doing it with our community partners? It is the thing that really where the field is at. I think in engineering, when we've got expertise where we can bring, where's that mutual learning and those things.
Thank you. I know we're coming up to the end of our time here, so I'm just gonna finish by asking you one last question here. So could you just share like a key takeaway or a lesson learned or something that you wanna close with to the audience related to how you approach community engaged work. What takeaway do you want to leave with the audience? Miriam, would you like to start?
I think here in Appalachia, there is a lot of need, and I think it's easy for people in higher ed to come in and try and help fix these problems. But being sensitive to our community partners needs to be number one. Like, they need to want us there and be as invested as we are. Going into rural counties and stepping on their toes is going to have long-lasting negative consequences, not only at the community level, but also for future higher ed or service learning projects. And so really taking the time to find partners that want your engagement and services, and you can have that equal opportunity together. I think that is the number one thing that I would encourage if you're considering here in Appalachia getting involved in service learning.
Thanks, Miriam. Celine, do you have any best practices or closing thoughts you'd like to share?
Well, Miriam inspires me and speaks my mind on that topic. And related to that, I just wrote down here, I have one of my key partnerships started in 2005. So we're about 20 years into this, long-term community partners. I often say to my students, it's the great joy of my career, this partnership. So rather than working with multiple partners and always chasing down, the next partnership, I really encourage people to find a partner that you resonate with and dig in deep. And also there's so many rewards for that. Also in terms of promotion and tenure. So I'm now the board chair of a nonprofit that has been my community partner for 20 years. This is my second round there. So I really understand the organization. I have a lot of passion for their work, and guess what? That shows up as service on my CV when I go up for promotion. So yeah, really invest in those deep partnerships. It makes a difference, and it's just such a great joy. Thanks.
Thanks. Any closing thoughts, Bill?
I'll echo what the other two said. I think, one of the things on Miriam's point to build on, we don't have to have all the answers. It's kind of refreshing. I think we as faculty think we have to have the answers, and going in of just going, one of my colleagues from LSU started her first program saying, I've never done this. I have no idea how to do this. And I think a lot of times we can tell our students, we don't know how to do this. None of us know. Together and with our partners, we're going to figure that out. I think you want to do this smart. Miriam talked earlier about assessing and things. Look at how you can do this. And Celine mentioned, where does this fit into your data and thing? If you're going to do this and you're going to get data, can you publish it? Whether it goes into an ASCE paper or, an education related paper or something like that, and try to do that smart. Third thing is, I think it's important to help make other colleagues and stakeholders understand how this connects to our mission. This isn't a different thing. I really look at what I'm doing is preparing future professionals. And we actually have some data we're publishing that this work prepares students for even traditional careers. So what we're really doing is it's a pedagogy. It's a high impact pedagogy. And I think we get enamored with the impact that we do when we talk about the student that went over, like you said, over into the Peace Corps and things. A lot of our colleagues are like, okay, that's not my main job. I said, you know what? It's an and. We're also preparing students to be better in those other things.
Thanks. Melissa, I'll hand it back off to you to close us off.
Wow. What a rich conversation. I'm feeling inspired and a lot of joy right now. Our hope is always that we can plant some seeds, and I know that many seeds were planted today. So thank you, all of you, for giving your time to us so we can inspire not only our faculty and staff here, but future students to go on and grow in their professions. I'll invite all of our participants to quickly turn on their cameras if they're willing. Sometimes it's nice to see who's present. And the Center for Community Engagement will send out a recording and any of the resources shared in the chat, as well as the emails of our panelists, because you might have more questions for them. So thank you everyone for taking the time to be here today. Great. And yeah, it's nice to see some faces. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone. Have a great day.